Peace to you. My name is Reverend Dr. Masia Evans, and I welcome you to First United Methodist Church, here in the heart of bustling Midtown Sacramento. We are an inclusive community that values justice and always seeks to practice love first. I pray that this message will be meaningful to you.
Hey y'all, how's it going? Good to see you. My name is Chris, and don't believe a word Masia says. Would you pray with me? Gracious and loving God, may the words of my mouth and the meditations of all our hearts now and throughout our week be acceptable in your sight. For you are our strength and our salvation. Amen. When I was a little girl, long before I knew that girls could be pastors, I wanted to be a dog when I grew up. Now I train dogs instead. I currently work as a service dog instructor for an organization called Liberty Dogs that trains dogs for veterans who are disabled, who are suffering with PTSD, traumatic brain injury, military sexual trauma, physical disabilities, and a number of other things. And it is the most fun job ever. And we're hiring, so if you're interested, come on down to Reno. I get to train dogs, and I brought a dog with me this morning in case the sermon is a dud, so you'll still like me. But you have to be very good when you greet her. So if you're all very good during the sermon and you laugh in all the right places, then afterwards I'll show you how to properly greet a service animal. She's also, never been to church before, so she's been standing up and sitting down in the wrong places, and you'll just have to forgive her for that. Training dogs sounds simple. Anybody tried to train a dog before? Yeah, everybody's got pets. Success rate, over under 50%. Yeah, it sounds simple, but training dogs is actually kind of tricky, and there's a reason for that. It's because we're primates. And they're not. And so the things that we think are very clear communication are not very clear communication to canines. For example, when you get frustrated, what do? You get a little louder. Perhaps you are one of those people who might shake whatever it is that you're holding in your hand. Imagine for a moment you see a dog behaving that way. Would you want to go closer? So Fluffy is not coming back in the park, and you start charging at Fluffy and shouting. If a dog did that, you would run away. Training dogs is harder than we think because we have to change our language. And the kinds of dogs that we train and the kinds of tasks we train them to do are pretty complicated. Our dogs are, when they're fully trained, Shannon here is 6 months old and she's learning, positionally perfect. They go exactly where we need them to go to create space around a veteran who might feel crowded. They will sit facing backwards behind a veteran when he's at the ATM so that he feels like somebody's got his six. They will interrupt her while she's having a dissociative or an anxiety attack with deep body pressure to help them be grounded where they are. The dogs are trained to do amazing, amazing things. They can bring medicine to a veteran at a particular time of day. They can help with basic household tasks. One time, my boss said that he trained a dog for a woman who was born without arms. And the dog was trained to help her open doors, close doors, do the laundry, could move the laundry basket from one side to the other, could load the dryer, all of these amazing things. And she said, joking around, "This dog can do everything except vacuum the floor." Well, that night he stayed late and he taught the dog how to vacuum the floor, no joke. They do amazing things. I had one veteran that I met who said, if I want to go outside and go for a hike now, I go outside and go for a hike. And if I want to go to town, I go to town. And if I want to stay home, I stay home. This dog gives me the freedom to make decisions. Gosh, isn't that beautiful? I want everybody to have the freedom to make decisions. about how they spend their time and live their life and connect to society, creating new levels of independence and liberation for people who are isolated and suffering, because the dog is willing to just learn how to do the boring stuff really, really well through repetition. I'm just going to repeat that in case you didn't hear it the first time. Imagine how we can create liberation for people who are isolated and suffering by being willing to learn to do something very simple really, really well through repetition. Don't we all want to be dogs when we grow up? That's the game, right? That is following Jesus. I'm not calling us dogs. I would never do that. We've got a long way to go until we are as good at loving and caring for people as dogs are. But I've learned a lot as a dog trainer. It's very different from pastoring people. For example, dogs are very concrete thinkers. People tend to be a little bit more abstract. Our opinions are shaped by our culture, our worldview, our identities, our experiences, but dogs are very practical. Their worldview is shaped by survival, and they figured out how to survive by being friendly. It's one of the most successful survival techniques in the history of the world. Survival of the friendliest. Dogs are also incredibly specific. They don't generalize well. Have you ever taught your dog something in the kitchen, and then you go into the living room to show somebody else the thing that you just taught them, and they look at you like they've never heard that word before? Yeah, they haven't, because you're in a different place, and they don't know that thing anymore. They know how to sit in the kitchen. They don't know how to sit in the living room. Generalizing is 90% of what we do. We teach a dog to do the same thing no matter where they are, no matter who is giving them command, every time they are asked. It's 90% of the work. Very simple things, over and over again, wherever you are, however you can, with whoever's around, over and over again, through repetition. They will know everything that they need to do so well that their handlers will never have to worry. Will my dog perform today? Will I be safe today? Will I be protected today? They'll know. They'll know that no matter if there's a bird or a dropped donut or an eager child or very well-meaning people who just want to say hi to the puppy, the dog knows it because it's done it thousands and thousands of times. Now, some of you are wondering, and you would be right too, did we accidentally attend a dog training seminar this morning instead of church? I promise I'm getting there. In fact, I'm getting there right now. Do you feel like you've heard the story of the Good Samaritan enough times in your life yet? How many repetitions do you estimate you've had? Tell me. At least 10? Yeah. I mean, it's hard to say. 50, 75, 100, 300, 400 times? How many times is enough? The Good Samaritan is a story Jesus tells in response to a conversation that he has in every gospel. So now for a bit of history. Are you ready for history? Here we go. The Gospels were not written in the order that they are in the Bible. Gasp! Everybody, gasp! Okay, they weren't written in that order. They were written over about 60 years. Anybody know which one is the oldest? Pastors, be quiet. Mark is the oldest, that's right. Anybody know which one is the youngest? John is the youngest, and you know because he points out that he beat Peter to the tomb. I was faster than Peter. I love John. Okay. As they were written so long after the events that they are describing, so like imagine right now you are writing a biography of Martin Luther King Jr. with no written resources. That's how long ago, okay? They are likely based on the stories that the community kept telling themselves over and over and over again about their experiences with Jesus. Probably Matthew and Luke used Mark, the oldest gospel, as a guideline, right? John kind of did his own thing, and we'll forgive him for that. Mark is the oldest gospel. And in this conversation that Jesus has about loving God and loving your neighbor in Mark, it is the most Jewish response that Jesus gives in all of the gospels. They say, which one is the most important? And he starts with the Shema. O hear, Israel, the Lord your God is one. Love the Lord your God with all your heart. And the second is like to it, love your neighbor as yourself. Jesus says it. Matthew is the next oldest. He's using Mark as a guideline, but he changes the story. And so when Jesus says, what do you think is the most important commandment? The people already say, love your God and love your neighbor. They've already put them together in the culture, in the canon. Jesus doesn't have to teach them. They have heard it enough to be able to guess at the right answer. Okay? This is like 20 years later. By the time Luke comes around, who says, love God, love your neighbor? Is it Jesus in the story? Where's our liturgist at? Yep. Do you remember who says it? Yeah, it was the lawyer. Yeah. So by the time it gets to the Gospel of Luke, 50 years after Mark, 40, 50 years after Mark, Jesus is no longer having to teach the people. They know the right answer. Which means that as Christianity is developing over these decades, the essential quality of loving God and loving your neighbor is becoming stronger and stronger and stronger. Right? Christianity grew out of this very fertile ground that is Judaism. And as it took on its own identity, this became the heart of it. And you can see it grow in importance throughout the Gospels, because it goes from Jesus introducing the idea to, in Luke, everybody knows, even the lawyer who doesn't like Jesus. Okay? Do you see how that changes over time? All right. As Christianity is developing, this becomes more and more essential, and Christianity begins to define itself by love of neighbor. It's not unique to Christianity to want to love people, to want to be compassionate, but the particular way that we express it is. In fact, there's some version of the golden rule in every religion, in every culture. I once preached a sermon called "The Golden Rule Tastes Like Chicken." Because it kind of does, right? When you're trying to describe something that's hard to describe, you start with a familiar touch point. Well, you know how in Christianity we say this? Well, in Buddhism it's this, and then in another religion it's this, and then in another religion it's this. We sort of explain it this way. This is familiar. Because humans, unlike dogs, generalize all the time. We put things, people, ideas into categories, and we analyze them. We don't take every instance specifically on its own. Tell me if you've ever heard, or maybe even thought, or said some version of this. All religions basically say the same thing. Anybody ever heard that? Okay. Do they? I mean, I don't think so. I think they're all pretty different, which is what I love about them. They're very particular and specific and concrete expressions of people's understanding of what is divine. And that is why they have to be different, because people are different. And that's what makes them beautiful. I once spoke to a poet called Michael Bornier. I love Michael Bornier. If you haven't seen his stuff, I invite you to look him up. He just finished performing a piece that he had written about a woman that he was in love with. And he described the width of the gap between her front teeth and the way that she danced in the kitchen to Lauryn Hill when she was making gumbo, and the time that she cried at the movie theater when they went to see Princess and the Frog, not because of the story, but it was because the first time she'd ever seen a Disney princess who looked like her. By the end of the poem, you were in love with her too. You could picture her and see her face, and you knew her dreams, and you felt her pains, and you knew what it would feel like if she held your hand. So I asked him about it. I just wanted to hear him talk about her more, because that kind of love is contagious, right? It was so vivid and so alive, and he said to me, nobody falls in love with generalities. You fall in love with specifics. People die trying to write something that will work for everyone. But the trick is to write something that is so detailed and so unique that everyone can see what is unique in the details of their own lives. You fall in love with details. Falling in love with details matters. That's why I can identify both as a Christian and, to steal this term from Barbara Brown Taylor, to be spiritually polyamorous. I love all of the different expressions that people have for falling in love with the divine. All of the particular ways that people connect with what is good and right and loving and just in the world. I don't need to make them all the same to appreciate them. They can be different and beautiful just as they are. I'm learning to think like a dog. I'm learning to be specific. I want to fall in love over and over and over again with the people of God, no matter who they love. That's what I'm trying to practice these days that feel mad when it seems like there are systems that want us to generalize each other, put each other in categories: legal, illegal. Y'all know the categories. I don't need to say them all out loud. They make me angry. They make me righteously angry, but I have more things to say to you before I get really angry, so we'll put it on the back burner. Generalizations tend to hide individuality and personhood. And once you've categorized someone, they are a number instead of a name, and it's much easier to make them less of a person in your head. Make yourself willing to dehumanize them. Make yourself willing to treat them like less. There are dangers in our world that we have to name and call out and speak out against. Racism and misogyny and bigotry and xenophobia and fascism and exploitation, all the isms, you name them. Greed, entitlement, parading in costume as political ideology or religious truth, and it's all nonsense. But there are also people living behind the labels that they throw in front of themselves like shields, and they are more complex than their generalizations. And when I am angry, it is harder for me to see them. There are people spouting generalizations that are also complex and specific and particular and unique. Do some of the nonsense things they are saying taste like chicken that has gone bad, been forgotten in the fridge, and served to you 3 weeks later? Absolutely, yes. It doesn't make them right. But how can we fall in love with the people of God if we put them under a different label and refuse to see them as anything else? It's a real question for me. I'm not throwing this out like, aren't we all silly enough not to do this? This is hard. This is really difficult. There are dangers in the world, and there are squishy people in the world, and finding the line between protecting those who are most vulnerable and loving the people who are attacking them is difficult. I keep thinking of the lyrics of the bluegrass band Mumford & Sons. They said, "It's not the long walk home that will change your heart. It's the welcome you receive with the restart." How do we offer the grace of God to people who cause damage through their loyalty to their label, with the hope of transforming the way that we can relate to and treat one another into something that is more just and more kind and more compassionate and more, tastes like Jesus? I'm working on building my repetitions when it comes to finding ways to relate to people. I want my convictions to draw me towards people instead of away from them. I want to be somebody who will love the person in front of me and all their particularity, even if I think they're really devastatingly wrong about things. The danger here is, of course, falling into love the sinner, hate the sin. I think what I'm trying to do is learn to see the whole person and build the reps of encouraging that which is worthy of encouragement. I'm not sure I would want any critical feedback from somebody who wasn't, trying to help me, trying to be my friend, trying to look out for my best interests. So I just keep praying and praying and praying and begging God to help me see the way God sees. I'm working on seeing Jesus in my neighbors, my literal next door neighbors, the ones who fly flags of political parties instead of country, the ones who use slurs for the humans I love, and the ones who try not to like me because I dare speak out loud with a loud voice from a high place for what I think is right, instead of staying quietly at home and raising a brood of blonde children. I love my neighbors who wear offensive t-shirts and red hats, and I love my neighbors with a sign out front that says science is real and no human is illegal and Black Lives Matter and women's rights are human rights. I love my literal neighbors as often as I can. And sometimes I love them even when my heart is breaking for them, because they cannot see how beautiful the people of God are. So I look at this particular story of Jesus again. Which rep am I on now? 401, 402. The story that turns a general version of love your neighbor into a particular face on a particular road in a particular moment. I see the outsider coming to the rescue. Where am I in this story? Well, listen, I'm a 6-foot blonde white woman. I'm not usually the outsider in the room. I don't get to claim the hero space. I have certainly been in the ditch. I think we've all been there from time to time. I would wager we've all been in need of truth-telling and healing and compassion and care, and we will be again. But there's another character here who deserves a second look. There's the innkeeper. I don't know how I lived on this world for 42 years and never thought about the innkeeper. But here we are. The innkeeper is tasked by the Good Samaritan, who has done the rescuing, with caring for the beaten man long term. The innkeeper is given all he needs to do it, and then the Samaritan leaves, and it's up to the innkeeper to get the man back on his feet again. Does that sound like church to you? If Jesus, the ultimate outsider, convicted felon, Galilean, homeless rabbi, rabble-rouser, son of a mother who conceived him out of wedlock, dismissed, rejected, conspired against, and executed, can you think of a more outsider than that? Is the Good Samaritan who pulls us all out of the ditch, who the minute we think somebody is below us, crawls below them. The minute we draw a line in the sand, walks to the other side of it, who shows us that we are children of the greatest power of love in the universe, even with our messy lives and our messy minds and our messy hopes and our messy choices and our messy hearts, and then leaves us to one another to care, to heal, to listen, to tend, to pay attention, to keep moving forward. But I think sometimes we forget that the call we follow is the call of the outsider. I think this thing is the thing that we need to build reps for. Learning to love one another truly, deeply, even when we are frustrated and know we are right, long term. Being community together and building a better world while we wait for the kingdom of God to arrive again in all its fullness, while we wait for the Samaritan. Not in a generic way, in a specific way. One person at a time, with the gap in their teeth and their dance moves and their tender hearts and their beautiful dreams, which may be hiding under a political or a cultural or a gender or a religious or any other kind of identity you can think of. The broken hearts and the battered pride and the buried hopes matter. The choices people are making at the highest level of government will hurt all of us, Maybe not all equally, but everybody is going to suffer. I was convicted this week by a meme, of all things. Sometimes the internet's good for something, A collaboration of several online influencers who try to make the world a more compassionate place, and they said, if you say they got what they voted for, when you see masses of people in this nation drown, or be abducted, or die at the hands of a government that lied and manipulated and indoctrinated to get their vote, you reveal that the same government also got your soul. Only empathy will save our world. They're not asking for much, are they? Just your whole heart, every day, every person, every moment, every place. For the people who drive you up the wall, for the people you think are destroying the world, and more specifically, the people that you know and love. But luckily, empathy is something we can practice. We can build reps. We can get really, really specific with it. And we can learn to do it every time we need to, in every place, no matter who asks. It can become automatic. We can create space for each other. We can offer new levels of liberation from falsehoods and judgments and stereotypes and bitterness and resentment for ourselves and for others. We can ground each other in the midst of a world gone mad. We can do the mundane, everyday things that show our care. If a dog can learn to vacuum, surely we can learn how to love. I still want to be a dog when I grow up. Amen?
Thank you for watching. To get further connected, you can always join us in person at one of our weekly worship services, which meets every Sunday at 10 a.m. here at 2100 J Street, Midtown Sacramento. Or for more information, you can click on one of the provided links, which is also posted in the description. Thank you for being a part of this community. And always remember, put love first. Peace.